Hi guys, my name's Craig Martin. I was the director of the company called Superseal, which did a project just over 7 years ago at Balmoral, and I'm now the director of Supersured. We've amalgamated a number of companies, ones that do 10-year maintenance plans and other things. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to create standards that become applicable. So most guarantees that you'll have in place are done on a reducing scale. So they may reduce over 5 years, where in the second year only 80% of the materials is guaranteed, for example, then 60, then 20, and so on. Almost from the outset, all of your big paint manufacturers will not guarantee crack repairs, and especially on a project where there is movement in the substrate. Now, in the case of Balmoral, the building is actually built on practically sea sand. And unfortunately, when a lot of the bricks and mortar were mixed, we believe that there was sea sand in there because we saw leachings, white salts that were coming out. We call this efflorescence, but it's the leaching of the salt, which is often common when proper building sand wasn't used, where there was a mix between maybe sea sand. And I think that's what the builder did at that complex. As a result, you'll often find that there's a long section of cracks that's in place, which might just be where that particular mortar mix was not done, and you can actually sometimes see the salts coming through. But I just want to clarify that our guarantee when it was Super Seal was very clear that any failure due to normal means would be applicable. In fact, the guarantee I'm going to read says repair for any blistering, peeling, chipping, flaking, or excessive chalking is covered conditions or as a result of flawed workmanship. Now, that's why I was very careful when we specified what particular paint to use, because we believe that we needed a paint that would not easily peel, especially on the walkways. Now, the main problem in investigation is what I suspected, and that is that the walkways and underneath the balconies is where the water is coming through. There was one area where the white paint, in fact, there's probably two areas, but on one block, where the white paint was used was not Elastomeric, it was a Dulux ordinary white paint, and there you can see how it's actually peeling. Whereas the Elastomeric product which we used, which was in the three colors, you'll see on the screen now the colors that were selected: dusty olive and winter leaf. Winter leaf being the darker color, dusty olive being the primary color. And that was mixed by Optima. Now, I just want to explain the type of coating. The Elastomeric product is a very thick paint. Normal paint for two coats would be about 150 microns, whereas a two-coat application of an elastomeric coating or Elastomeric is between 300 and 350 microns. So it's more than double the size and thickness of a normal coating. In fact, if you peel off the paint, you'll see it. But what it does is it has a rubberizing effect. So if there's water trapped in the substrate, which we knew would happen on the walkways and the balconies, is water has been penetrating that substrate and water needs to come out. If there was an ordinary paint there, it would simply get behind that paint and blister it to peel to find its way out. What it does with an elastomeric coating is that you would probably have seen this in winter, is that the paint actually stretches and looks almost like a bubble's forming. A lot of people don't understand that and pop it, but that's not what you must do. The paint will then expand and allows the water to come out, and then it contracts again. And you'll see that, but it doesn't delaminate. So from a distance, the paint still looks good. If you look up close, you'll see perhaps where it has stretched and contracted. But hopefully on the higher areas of the building and that's not visible. But that's the design of the paint. And that I'm very impressed that the coating after 7 years hasn't failed under the walkways to the extent that it's delaminated, peeled, or blistered. There are areas where I can see people have touched and pulled on it, and that is the whole thing with this coating, is it's not designed to do that. So the discussion I had with the original trustees, that was probably 8 years ago, was that the walkways, the balconies, they all have serious problems with them, and they actually needed to either be lifted and the torch on redone and retiled. Now, in today's costs, depending on what tiles are selected, you're looking at between 460 and 550 to 600 rand per square meter. So it's really prohibitive. But the fact remains that regardless of what needs to be done, the problem at Balmoral is not the paint coating. The problem is the waterproofing on the walkways and on the balconies. Now, the balconies are part of the section, so that presents a little bit of a challenge in terms of recovery of the cost, but not really a problem if everybody is doing it. Some people, having done the inspection, I can see, have recently addressed the waterproofing issues on the balconies, and probably what they've done is lifted it, put torch on, or the old methodology, and replaced. Now, what we have prepared a quote for, if you'd like to receive it, you just need to tell me, and we can do it with a video explanation as well. And I'll show you just exactly, for taking a section on how we'll do it part by part. But it would be this process. If you can have a look at the process, I'm showing you some examples of it. It's a polyurethane product, so made by Optima, the same company that made the elastomeric coating that you've got there. And what we do is, it's actually 5 parts to it, but it'll work out to between 170 and 185 rand per square meter, as opposed to almost 3 times that with the old method of lifting, waterproofing, and so on. And what we do is we level off the grouting. The grouting is the problem because there's a lot of water penetration happening in the grouting. The grouting is porous. We don't know what the quality of the waterproofing underneath those tiles are, but I don't think they're very good. And what will happen is then we put in a product called 820, which levels off the grouting with the tile, and we fix up any cracks that are in the tile so that they don't need to be replaced. So it looks basically like a level floor. And then we have to roughen up, give a very light grind to the top of the tiles, because your tiles are glazed tiles and they're not going to allow a coating to adhere very easily without us first grinding and roughing up that surface. Then we put what we call a DPM primer, which is a primer that doesn't allow water penetration. We put 2 coats of polyurethane coating, and then we can put a non-slip coating as the final of the 5 steps. Now, again, that whole cost will be around 185 rand per square meter roughly. It's far more cost effective than anything else, and you can choose a very nice neutral color if you want to change the colors, or if you want something that matches the existing colors, you can have a shade that matches something very similar. And then you've got, as you can see from the pictures here, a very beautiful final product that seals off water from penetrating the top. And then if you put in a quality paint like we've recommended at the bottom, I believe you will get 10 years of life out of those stairs and landings. And the same can be done with the balconies, because by and large, keeping in mind that Balmoral is built on sand, there's movement. You saw that with the boundary wall where there was shifting as water and flooding occurs, so that those sands shift. And so the reinforcement of the foundations would have been very important in the building. And we can see some areas where perhaps there wasn't sufficient steel reinforcement, or there wasn't the vision on the foresight of what might happen as soil movement occurs within Balmoral. So I'm going to explain very quickly what we can do for you, just taking a section of the block. Now, I've gone through this whole area. It took me about 3 hours, and so we can do the whole thing. But I'll just get you up to about 30,000 Rand just to show you exactly what needs to be done in certain sections. Okay, we're starting at this block right at the back where there's 90, 64, 34. Obviously these steps need to be done, and you can actually see that this particular stair block has taken quite a lot of problems with water ingress. There's quite a lot of bubbles and peeling here because of the water coming in. There are also issues with the railings and the uprights, especially around the feet corrosion. The top of the parapet walls it's got a membrane on it which is helping with some of the waterproofing, but obviously you can still see that there's water getting into these walls, and most of it is probably siphoning up from getting into the substrate because there isn't proper waterproofing under the tiles. So we would also recommend redoing the entire walls, repainting them on the stairwells after addressing the waterproofing of the tiles. Some attempt has been made to try and waterproof the grout, but this is also obviously failing. There are some cracks which are starting to show again on the main building. You can see that the paint coating hasn't failed because although water has tried to escape, what's happened is the paint has let it escape, but it hasn't delaminated. It's gone back, so it would have bubbled during winter and then contracted again, and that means that it's really doing its job. But there's a lot of water that's coming in from the balconies above, and so if it was any other coating it probably would have broken by now.
Okay, for this block they come off.
So we're going to allow for crack repairs. There's another 3 for the water meters, and then this is the next set of stairs. You can see that there's actually spalling that's occurring here. This is when the rebar expands and then pushes the cement out because of the water that's getting into the building.